call the meeting to order. We don't have any guests, so we have no introductions to do. We have minutes here from the last meeting.
Will Jason be here today?
No.
Okay. Are we,
You want a motion to approve the minutes? So do.
can we, I just wondered, the reason I asked about Jason is the minutes say there's leaving 10 to be completed, and the slip that Jason sent out to us has 9 on it. I didn't know if that's where or what that occurs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think he just prioritized those 9. Yeah.
Okay, just left out the
Right.
10, or the 10th isn't necessary, I guess.
Okay. What I would like to do on the agenda is,
Did we get a second
Need a vote.
and an approval?
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Second.
Second and approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right. On the agenda, I'd like to add a 4E, which is capital. Just want to talk about where we are and what the current status is of capital projects. Okay? Without objection? Thank you. All right, organization. You have in front of you a marketing subcommittee charter, and there is one correction, which is in help me, Liz, where did you find that?
It is in section 3 in the header.
Is that the title?
Oh, the director of,
That staff title is not correct, and we'll need to make sure we have the correct one in your final version. You might just confirm with Jamie and Paul what that
Yeah, I believe is
actual
that,
title is.
yeah, the actual title, I believe is marketing manager, but we will
Yeah.
confirm that. This is taking the subcommittee for the CMPAC charter, changing it, updating it, and is what we would like to use for the finance and planning version of the marketing subcommittee. I guess we have to vote.
Yeah, it'll have to go to the board, but yes,
No.
this group should vote on
The committee has the authority to create a
Oh, that's
sub-charter
right.
within their committee,
That's right.
as long as it falls within our committee's charter, which
Right.
is fine. But you do need the action of this committee to constitute the charter. Does that make sense?
it. What she said.
Yeah.
All right, is there any thoughts or comments on this? I apologize, I didn't get it out earlier so you could read it in advance.
My only question is, you have the subcommittee making direct recommendations directly to the board, and typically it would make recommendations back to this committee. A subcommittee would.
yeah, under duties and responsibilities, A,
Annual limitations, but, yeah.
To the board instead of to so just put to the planning committee
to finance.
or finance and planning committee?
Okay. All right.
It's in there several places, so you might just want to read
Yeah.
through
it's-
it again.
Replace that with committee. Yeah, it is.
On 3F, what's the thought behind 2 consecutive 3-year terms? Is that just to build some continuity in the subcommittee? or-
I think is fairly standard in the POA
It
committee.
is. It just lifted from.
Yeah,
other
and some of
charters.
what we were trying to do, actually, if that's stated in the bylaws, is maybe not stated in the charter, versus trying to repeat it. Because what we found is that when the bylaws or when the higher document gets revised somehow, then your committee charters are out of compliance. So if that's, and I think that is stated really clearly in the bylaws for the committee's formation, you may not need to state it again here, I guess is my point.
This may be inappropriate, but should there be, do they need a permission or anything to coordinate it all with the cell agency or cells agency?
They,
Is that just understood?
they won't directly coordinate
They won't.
with the sales agency, the staff will do that,
Okay,
but they provide input to the staff.
okay, thank you.
So we're allowing this charter to give the committee some autonomy to make decisions or recommendations directly to staff and the board without coming through the planning?
The recommendations come through us,
Okay.
but then if in the course of their discussions, Paul can ask, or the staff can ask questions and certainly receive input. But formal recommendations.
I would say that too, that in that section 3, I just noticed this, it says staff liaison. That needs to say staff member. Since we don't have liaisons anymore. As of right now, it's in that header of section 3.
Okay.
So it should be staff.
Yep.
And then on the last page, that wouldn't be board approval, that would be finance and planning. Down at the bottom. Where it says approval.
Right. Okay. Any other suggested changes? All right, do I need to walk through what the changes were?
If you would be so kind.
Okay. Under 3, the heading, we're changing the Director of Sales and Marketing to the Marketing Manager, will serve as the staff member of the Marketing Subcommittee. The point F, we're just going to eliminate the point F, it's in its entirety. In 4A, we're going to change Board of Directors to the Finance and Planning Committee. In 4G, we're going to do the same. In 5A, do the same.
There's
And
2 others.
on page 3 at the bottom, we're going to put Finance and Planning Committee approval instead of board approval.
Number 4 in section C
Mm-hmm.
and in E refers to board of directors.
Yeah, there's one in E and there's one in G.
A, C, E, and G. And then section 5, it's A and E.
G,
It's at the bottom.
and A and E, okay. All right.
And just for my clarity, on section 3, item E, the treasurer, board liaison, and second board member will interview the applicants for the market subcommittee, making recommendations up to 9 applicants to the board of directors. Is that how we're going to do that?
We're going to do it just in the committee.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another one, the liaison should be a board member. Board committee member.
All right. So those
On
are-
3A, looks like a typo, the subcommittee.
Oh, man. I thought I picked every one of those off. You know, this is taken from the one subcommittee and transferring it. I guess I missed.
No problem.
All right. Given the changes we just walked through, does anybody have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve with changes.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
One question.
Yeah.
This is within the scope of our, okay.
Yeah, the board had asked that this be set up as a subcommittee of the Finance and Planning Committee.
But it requires no change to our charter.
No.
Okay.
No, in fact, it's in our charter. All right. The subcommittee status, we have interviewed a number of people. We are still entertaining additional candidates, and so we are, in fact, I think Thursday. We have two on Thursday that we're talking to. So it will probably be another week or two before we finalize who all is going to be on the committee. But, you know, we're very pleased with the people we've talked with so far, and, you know, we're optimistic we'll have a very good group on there. Anything you wanted to add? Okay.
Do you have enough candidates in the queue right now? Or do you need more potential candidates?
We'd like to have more candidates. You know, it's always better to have more than less. And so, you know, if we had any more, that would be good.
Marcy's trying to get your attention.
I just want to, so it's on the same subject. I found out that we were kind of half right with what Liz was talking about. If you're going to create a charter for the marketing committee, we have to bring it to the board. But other than that,
Not a subcommittee, we don't.
that's what I just got from Ella. Because the subcommittee for CMPAC marketing, and then the new subcommittee for the census from GAC, same thing, they all created a charter.
Okay.
So we'll do it in a consent agenda, but just so you know.
That's fine.
Not the way I read it the first time.
Check that bylaw reference, because I believe it allows the committees to create their own subcommittees.
Bylaws do.
Pardon me?
The bylaws allow the committees to assign their own subcommittees.
Absolutely,
That's what we're talking about.
yes. But the subcommittees, if you create a charter for them, it has to be approved by the board. Or that's the precedent. That's all I'm telling you is what Ella had said.
Can we call it an organizational structure instead of a charter? And
No, this is the appropriate way to do it. Let me see what it says.
We will, it's not a big deal to
No.
No.
put it on the consent agenda, so
Yeah.
we'll just do it and make sure that we're covered, okay?
Thank you.
Do we have a date then when we're trying to get that committee finalized?
We'd like to get it finalized sooner rather than later, but, you know, if we could get it in the next week, that'd be good. We were trying to get it set up for this week, but we just didn't quite make it.
It's in Article 12,
It's actually,
Section 4H. Standing committees may appoint subcommittees consisting of their own members or others as appropriate, provided by the purpose of the subcommittee is within the scope of the charter purpose of the standing committee.
Liz, could you give that to me one more time?
Article 12,
Article 12,
Section 4,
Section 4,
number H.
and H. Thank you.
All right, so, All right, one of the things that we need to start doing is really kicking off the strategic planning portion of committee work.
Before you do that, Dan, I just want to remind you that you need to elect a new secretary.
We will. at the
Okay,
end.
okay.
We've already reviewed the CMP and pulled out the items that are pertinent. At this point, we need to begin the process of developing a 3-year and a 5-year plan. We're already working on budgets for 2021, and we will need to begin working on the subsequent years. So with that, we would like to set up a working group for that, and we're looking for volunteers that would like to work on that. Tom, thank you. Are there any others? Okay.
I'll do it if I can be of assistance, but.
The trio comes back together?
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
No, that's fine. I got
Or is it-
experience.
Did you want to participate in that?
What's that?
Did you want to participate with that?
I will. They probably have a lot more experience because they've been through it, but I'll be glad to.
Fantastic.
We also have a few people from off the committee that have volunteered to participate, and I will get those to you, Tom. And if you could please visit with them. And it would be good if we shot for, you know, like a 3 or 4 month period to try to get a initial plan at least in place. Does that seem reasonable?
We have 3 months, 4 months? Okay.
Well, it's summer.
You want less time?
You might want to take some vacation.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, we could shorten it a
Well,
lot.
that's okay.
Okay.
We'd rather under-promise and overachieve.
Yeah, I mean, if you're finished earlier, that's great, but we need to start planning. And as it relates to our cash flow forecasting, we need to begin to, as part of, once the budgeting gets to a certain point, we want to begin looking out to, you know, 2021, 2022, 23, 24. So it's going to be important. Okay? All right. Budget oversight. Well, obviously, with Liz's departure, we're going to have some changes in approach to budgeting, and that will be picking up here in a couple of weeks. So, Wayne and John, if you guys can hold on tight for a little while here until we get the new organization in place, which shouldn't take very long.
I'd like to say that I think there's one large variable that we'll need to address one way or another before we get too far along. If we want to build a zero-based budget, then that's an extra layer of work, because how I see that is you look at each individual 76 departments and you start out with, we're building a new department. How many people do we need? What is the crewing standard? What is the labor standard? What is the material standard? And come up with that. And that's going to take some considerable work and time. That's not, you agree that that'd be
Absolutely.
a big ball to tackle. For instance, like on a golf course, ponds. What's standard crewing on ponds? 3 maintenance guys, a guy in the shop, a maintenance guy, what is it? I don't know what standard crewing of a golf course is, okay? And
Well-
all we can go is by what is it here and talk to the people that currently manage. So there'll be a lot of interface with the departments as we go along. If we want to include that, then I think those discussions need to be early on now. To start building, what does that standard look like? What does that zero base look like?
Well, one of the things that the board has discussed is how do you set your minimum level of performance at say, Ponce? And then how do you build up from there? You know, what is it that you require to hit that minimum level of performance, and what does it cost to do that? And so we have to spend time with the golf department, and we have to spend time with the individual courses in order to see what it is that we need to accomplish.
Yeah, I could potentially see a whole all-day session, if you will, where the different golf courses come in, and we go through each one, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours apiece, and we chug through all 9, or maybe over 2 days, depending on how long
Yeah.
we want to go, you know, and do it that way. And you make some quick hay there, but.
Yeah, and it may be that golf is one, recreation is another, and they are long day sessions in order to go through and really break them down to the level that we need to get to. So, but we will be working towards that over the next week or so. And
Okay.
I think we're going to be able to move pretty quickly.
Okay, just wanted to throw that out there.
So are we not doing these guidance things, we're not recommending those to the
Yes,
board?
we are recommending those to the board, and the board will have that.
Do we need to approve them here then, in their final form?
Oh, we did last week.
Yeah, because I believe this is on the discussion agenda tomorrow.
Okay. You all have this? I thought we had already signed off on it, but let's make sure that everybody,
This was with all our revisions and notes that I sent out today.
all right, let's make sure everybody is in agreement with them.
Are you on the budget guidance, is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it covers what we talked about. Do we have a motion to approve?
Approved, I make a motion.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then we will have that on the discussion tomorrow for the board. All right. We were going through the ad hoc committee report. We will address as time goes on. That will probably be more involved in the budgeting process as we go through it. Policies and procedures, we were holding finance and procurement for the July board meeting. Liz sent some information out last week. If you have comments that you want to forward to me based on that, I can look at it and modify the report. If you want to discuss whether we keep any of the policies or keep the finance policy, we should probably set that for a meeting discussion, which we will do in the next meeting that we have. Okay?
Just to be sure, is the financial policy you sent out this, and we changed it sometime to financial policy versus?
That's what
fiscal?
Dan said. I handed you guys a packet last week of our existing financial policies. And so right now, they're kind of broken up where there's a debt policy and there's a audit and funds control policy. And
Okay, it's
the
all right.
financial policy had some new stuff in it and sort of consolidated a bunch of those. And so my recommendation was not to consolidate them because you want to have a reference point for a certain thing. The board talked about moving them all into one chapter, one section.
Okay.
So my recommendation is to take a look at what exists and take a look at the new recommendation too, and try to figure out how you want to modify the existing policies with that new information. And the other thing Jayma and I talked about a little bit was that we've tried, as we've updated policies over the year, to keep a consistent format, just like we do with the charters and some of that other stuff, so that there's a stated purpose, any reference to authority, if it references authority granted in the bylaws somewhere, that you've got those points of reference, and then definitions, anything like that, and then the meat of the policy. And so that's some of the thought that, you know, I had, and just kind of asked the committee to look at that and think about it.
Yeah, and we'll get into it.
In the last
In the next
meeting, Jayma, did you say you were gonna look at the two and kind of?
I did.
Okay.
I've not-
What your opinion would be important, at least to me.
I'll get that to you.
Yeah, we'll address it in the next session, okay? Capitalization depreciation, we haven't started yet. Investment policy, I guess there wasn't a written document.
It is, yeah, I'll send it to you,
Okay.
the draft of it, where it's, and let you know at what point we stopped reviewing it. We had taken a sample from somewhere else, and we're working through it section by section to modify it to fit here the right way, so.
And you had never gotten to the point of discussing that with,
Investment brokers,
Investment broker.
that's, we kind of hit the point where you're actually talking about the different investment types. And what the committee we talked about was sending that to a couple different banks and investment brokers to take a look at and give us some thoughts on, is that appropriate, or are we locking ourselves into some stuff? Because that's part of the problem with our existing policy, is that it's so narrow that we can't do some of the stuff that would really benefit us.
Okay. All right, well, if you can send that to us before you take off, that would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify? I'm sorry, but the investment policy now is not the chapter one. This is the current investment policy.
That is the current
Okay,
investment
thanks.
policy, yes.
Okay, so you're sending us what?
A draft that we were working on that would replace that policy.
Okay, sorry to be,
Yeah, it just, the feeling was that didn't provide the flexibility that the POA needs.
I agree.
Okay. I want to refer you to this chart. The column where it says balance, and it's green and yellow and red, I probably should change the name balance. But what that is, just to give you a visual of things that are moving forward are green. Things that are stopped are red, and yellow are the items that should be considered one way or the other. At the top of the page, you'll see to the far right, you see cancel, review, and proceeding. Those three columns are the amount, or are the projects that are moving forward and what the dollar amounts are that are being spent in each of those. The totals at the top, the three, say over cancel, it says $1,630,030. That is the total of the cancel column, okay? So as we look at this, in total, it's a $6.3 million capital program for this year, of which $3.6 million is committed, and $1,078,000 is designated as to be reviewed. And that's after Liz and I went through the projects and you know what items still needed to be reviewed. And then the cancel is the line that is either the project is stopped or it is not scheduled to go forward at this point.
I would say at this time, I mean, it's not to say none of it's needed, it's just that's where
Right.
That's where it's easiest to hold without hurting us too badly.
Right. And so as you turn to page two, in the middle of the page, you'll see a blue block in that column, and that is the culvert work, the $500,000 for the culverts.
Do we have that in the cancel section? No.
The
Oh, I
staff-
see it, okay.
Yeah, the
Sorry.
staff put it in, had it in the cancel column as part of their $1.7 million estimated recovery plan.
Just to hold it.
And it was moved to it's currently still sitting in that cancel column.
Okay.
So there are a couple of issues here. One, the May financials came out, appear to be relatively good. And so we did not lose ground in May. So that's good news. But obviously, the question is, do we feel good enough that we want to release a $500,000 amount? The second part of this is we probably should be looking at some of these costs anyway. Do we really want to spend $6.3 million in capital in an operation that is only generating about $33 million total? And so that's a huge capital number that we're putting out there. As we look at this, we have a number of items in the utility category that are in the to be considered column. And those are on page 1. And there are some in page, no, all the ones that are not released are on page 1. So that's where you see the yellow at the bottom of the page there.
So Dan, just as a side here, if it's in the utility division, if they don't spend it on capital in the utility division, then it would have to go into their reserves. We don't use utility funds to fund amenities and other projects.
Right.
So if we've got things on hold or canceled in utilities, it doesn't get to go somewhere else, I guess is my.
That automatically adds to reserves, is that what you're saying?
Well, we would have to determine what was gonna happen with it, but.
At the end of the year would be a decision. All right, so the question here is, first, how good do we feel about releasing $500,000 or making a recommendation to the board that they release that $500,000 for the culvert work? Now, we can release it in several ways. We can release it all at once, or we can release it for individual projects. And so the question is, how do we feel about that?
Can I go back one question? Because I'm new to this and don't understand cash flow. When you say May is doing well, or we're on budget, is that dividing the revenue, annual revenue, up into equal monthly installments? Because I know from one of your reports, it's not, we don't do forecasting based on when we actually anticipate receiving it? We do. We do. So we're ahead of what we, or on chart with what
For the month.
is forecast for actual May.
So year-to-date, we're $198,000 ahead of budget year-to-date and $257,000 ahead of last year. Operating, not capital, just operating results.
Thank you.
That's all well and good, but that can go away in a heartbeat.
Well,
Absolutely.
So the question is, how confident?
My
do we-
knowledge of our cash flows and where we're at and what we've faced this year, my recommendation would be to release part of that based on the first project that is the highest priority and hold off another couple of months. July, August, and September are the tightest cash flow months we have here. Because we don't have all our utility revenue, but we've done a lot of work and things like that through the year. And we have to pay our property taxes, which is a pretty hefty bill. So just some of those other pieces coming in the next couple months. I would recommend holding off to see how we're doing until we get past some of that cash flow crunch time.
The obvious highest priority is the metal plates laying on the road.
Yeah.
And we need to make those go away.
And I think that would be ideal.
So that is, I think 83,000 for that piece alone.
Did Jason have 3 priorities?
He had 3 priority projects, all of them roughly in the $80,000 to $100,000 range.
No, they are not on his chart, or do we know? They aren't in order of his priority. Because he had mentioned last week, I think, the ones on near Magellan Pond,
Well, this list is his priorities, isn't
Yeah,
it?
they
this
are
list,
in the order of his priority?
that is his
Okay.
priority.
Yeah, so the top 3 are 130, 160,000,
I haven't seen that, so I don't know.
160, 82, 48, 24,
James,
He's got to
neither one has seen
prioritize
that
running
list.
total.
130, 154, 155,
Yeah, 156 is,
the top 3.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the questions that maybe should be asked of Jason is, and of the group, is do we authorize those top priority projects dependent on cash flow? Or do we just do them one at a time? And, because I don't know if he can get a better price through that process versus the one-off kind of deal. I mean, we can't afford to do all 3 of them until we know if the cash flow, as Liz has already pointed out. But do we go ahead and authorize that based on our cash flow at the time when they finish this one? Or do we just do them one-off?
Jamie, what's your recommendation?
I don't have, he didn't give us that copy. What are the first 3? I know that we have DeSoto at the,
Well, the contractor wouldn't be doing all 3 at the same time.
No.
So they'd be spread out over at least 3 months. Or he could make them spread out over 3 months.
I think he said
How much are they?
Yeah.
last week that there was an $800
Yes.
mobilization
Yeah,
fee
which
for
is not
equipment or something like
Yeah,
that.
if
The
it's
grand
only
scheme of things.
$800, I would take it every time.
Yeah, exactly, that's not-
Well,
Well, we know all these need to be
I
done,
was gonna say,
but
we
with
can
the
wait.
current financial conditions,
Well-
I think we should do maybe half, the top 5, which brings us to 230,000, and give Jason the ability, maybe in a couple months, if things look positive, can come back and ask for the additional 5 places.
I was gonna
Let's
say,
break-
So
let's
looking
break
at
it
that
up.
running total, that makes sense.
I was gonna say the first 3, for sure.
that's what I was gonna say. It's just safer.
All right,
Yeah, but then,
so we have 3 or we have 5?
Well, it really comes down to the amount of money that we think that we can afford. At 3, we're looking at 155,000 total, and if we do 5, we're at 230,000 total, which is a little more than half of what he, excuse me, a little bit less than half of what he was asking.
Okay.
Did you tell us the cost of the, moving the equipment? Did he ever tell us
The,
that?
the discussion was that if we do 1 and then the contractor leaves, then it's another $800 to truck everything back to the village. So, if you did each one, then it's gonna add another $800 to each project as we piecemeal this out.
Okay.
But once the equipment's here, then they should be able to move it from location to location.
And if we do, it's gonna take a while to do the project, so it's not like he's going to.
Oh, I don't think they'll finish in a week.
Yeah. Originally, he was talking about starting in July.
Right.
Right,
So you're talking about spending $230,000 in July, August, and September, which are your tightest months.
So you'd feel better with the first 2 or the first 3?
I would feel better stopping at 3. instead of 5, and take it and play it by ear.
And we may be able to approve, depending on how July, August, and September go.
Yeah, and then come back in
Right.
later in the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Or
The
make a
3
decision
projects is
before
gonna
they
hold
meet.
them through the summer anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
He's not gonna be able to do any more than that, so.
I mean, he was looking at all of them in July through November, so if you go on and write the contract up for the first 3 and allow them to start in July, then probably by the time they're done with that and ready to start the new contract, you guys will have a much better picture of what your cash position looks like.
And we should also note that this is not the total of all the activity going on regarding culverts, because a lot of the work is done by our internal staff. These are the bigger projects that require outside service support to get done.
If you look at the 3-year O&M plan, there was actually culverts on 2 different lines. And one was the outside general contractor budget, and the other one was costs for internal, yeah.
All right, so, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion
For the top 3?
to authorize the top 3 project.
Okay,
I'll second.
Second.
all right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and this is a recommendation to the board. The board has to make the decision to release those funds.
Jamie and I'll work with Jason on the contract
And I
and
think it's.
recommendation.
Next week.
I think that's the best
Yes.
thing to do.
All right. Okay. We need to name a secretary for the interim while Liz is leaving as of Friday. And so
Are you leaving?
we,
She keeps trying to talk me into staying longer, it's not working.
and,
Got your straight lady over there.
and so we need to name a secretary for the interim. Are there any volunteers?
I nominate Butch.
No.
He can write. I mean, this
I
guy.
would
No.
He can write. I get so many emails from him, he can
It
write.
needs to be a committee.
Second?
No, guys.
Call for the question.
I'm really bad at this. My spelling is horrible.
Oh,
That's not-
Well, just as an aside,
It would be really bad.
what I was gonna recommend, and I know that these committees don't have a lot of volunteers that go shoot their hand in the air for secretary, but I really think one of the one-year committee members should take this on, and perhaps even split it up, 6 month, 10, and then you're off the committee.
Let me just, it seems like we're getting through stuff in a hurry, so we're doing a good job. I once was coaching basketball, and normally as a head coach, I could feel all kinds of stuff that was going on the court. I mean, I really could. I mean, I could look at some kid's eyes, and I could know if he was gonna make his next shot. I was once an assistant for the head coach, and he wanted me to keep track of the stats. It drove me absolutely crazy. I couldn't pay attention to the game. I was really bad at it, and I missed everything that was going on. I'd rather just sit back and let my mind kind of.
I think he said no.
So that's a maybe?
You could have been taking minutes during this whole time. But
I can do pro time until you.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
Marcy.
Marcy's got a ton. I would give it a
It needs to
shot
be a
if
commitment.
Larry will guarantee that I can watch it afterwards in order to not miss anything.
Well, I mean, Marcy has volunteered if
Okay.
if you want her to, or one of the committee members would like to do it. Either way, it's fine with me. We just need a motion to go one way or the other.
Marcy would be fine, because she knows the formats and everything.
I don't think the charter says it's from amongst the committee
I
members.
tried
That's
it
the
the
only
first
problem.
2, and I think I got fired, because they never released them.
No, we never approved them. We never got the committee back together to
I
approve them.
have a
I don't
directive
wanna try it
from
again.
from the chairman of the board that says, I will assist each and every board member in any way I can, so.
Well-
If it's pro tem, again, it's fine with me.
Is there something in the charter that says that somebody has to be elected from the
Probably.
board?
Yeah.
Or from the committee?
Committee, vice chair, and secretary shall be elected by the committee.
But it doesn't say.
But it's talking about it's all in the organization of the committee. Maybe it doesn't, it's not set, so maybe it can be.
Well, Kathy, congratulations.
Well, I said I'd give it a shot.
Kathy, I have a lovely little template, I will email you.
Fantastic.
All
And
in
again,
favor,
it will
Kathy?
be, I'm over.
Thank you, Kathy.
Somebody needs to
Thank
make a
you.
motion.
Don't wanna hear this.
Yeah, who made the
Two
motion?
meetings and I got.
Can we have a motion?
I make a motion that Kathy is our new secretary.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I will send you the little
And
Excel
overruled.
template.
Anything you have to, recording.
All right.
Don't you? You
Um,
don't?
I don't, but
That was all the items that I had on the agenda today. Are there other items anybody wants to bring up?
Can I bring up the charter, that one line on the charter thing?
Yes. There is a correction we need to make on the charter itself.
Well, it's actually like Back to the Future. It was the one that Dan had offered up it was originally under limitations, but it was, the not was taken out.
Correct.
Okay, and then Tom said, well, it's not a limitation, so we're gonna put it back above in, duties and responsibilities. That was, voted down.
It went to the board, and
Because
Dan,
of
you
the
were
form-
outside,
Right.
you weren't there at the board when they did that.
Well, it was voted down because of the previous CEO. So now we can actually change it back.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
good.
this
That's in
committee
violation of bylaws.
should serve as a check on what the administration is doing.
until you change the bylaws, though, it's in violation of what the bylaws say. That's the
We're
problem.
gonna tackle that, so, yeah,
So you may need to come back to it after you change the bylaws.
understood, or at the same time.
Well, all we're doing
So-
is making a recommendation to the board.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I just wanna let you know.
But it was, Dan, it was something that was important
To
that you
him.
wanted.
Yes.
And that makes all the difference in the
Which
world.
is why-
And, yeah, and, you know,
Thank
if the finance committee is not, in part, monitoring what's going on administratively, that's, you know, what the committee is for. So we're just wanna put that back in, but we need a motion.
I'll make the motion that we put that back in.
Second?
I'll second.
Who's second?
Wayne,
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other items? This may be the fastest meeting. I'm trying to make up for last week.
Holy moly.
We're gonna meet again next Tuesday.
Well, we addressed the item that was on the agenda for next Tuesday, which was the capital issues. One capital item that we did not talk about, but we can talk about it, if you don't mind taking a few minutes, is if we release that, do we want to take this yellow, or the review column, and recommend to the board that we continue to hold those dollars until late in the year, so that we're confident that we have the performance to support it at year end.
I think
You're
that's,
just talking about the yellow items?
Yes,
except one of them is HVAC.
the red ones are currently held,
Red ones are currently held.
so it's the yellow ones that are in question. I would recommend that we do hold them until late in the year.
Well, can we maybe have Jema work with John Paul and the staff to see if there's anything in there that was gonna be up and coming that might be really important? Because I'm just kind of glancing at it, I'm not sure.
A high priority item, I can go through with John Paul.
Like the meter replacement program, wait, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to follow here.
The meter replacement, is that for new meters, replacement of existing
Yeah,
meters?
that's
or
not one of them. That
updating to
one's-
the
Yeah, that
That one's not,
electronic?
no, I'm trying to follow the
The
line
first
here.
one would be
I'm looking
buoys
at
and
water
dock
pump
repair.
building and intake upgrades. That may be critical, I mean, without talking to the water division, I really don't know what the timing plan was for that and how critical it might or might not be.
Is that not under public utilities?
It is.
So what we probably need to do is separate public utilities
A lot of
from,
this is
from the,
utilities.
from the list and make a separate list for that, since they're supposed to be funding themselves.
Well, but what we may want to do is hold on that until we get later in the year. Because in the worst cases, it goes in reserve. So,
Personally, I think all the projects should be reviewed. You know, and if they're that critical, then they need to get, like Jason did, come in and quickly explain the situation, and so we can make a recommendation to the board.
what if we made a recommendation that all the ones all the yellow ones are held until we have a chance to review them individually?
That makes sense.
And yet the column was review.
Right.
Yeah.
So the red items, the cancel items, would be held with the exception of the culvert that we just talked about. And the review items would be held until we have a chance to review those projects in greater detail. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Who was that second? Was that Morrison? John.
John?
I knew it came from that direction, I couldn't hear.
All right. All right. Any,
One other question.
okay.
Did you guys decide how you wanted to approach, or even if you wanted to approach the chapter 9 information? The policy,
We talked about.
creating the new chapter 9 and,
No, we have not, we did not resolve that.
okay.
And we'll do that in the future. That's the consolidation of financial policies.
Oh, I see. Yeah, got it. We were talking about earlier. I got it.
All right?
Move-
Anything else for the good of the group? Or not for the good of the group? Thank you very much, and we'll, our next scheduled, when?
Tuesday.
Next week.
So we still have a time next Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we don't need it, we will cancel it. I'll just have John send out his note.
And I just want to say for the record, I have no idea.
Sometimes when you go on your iPhone and put a meeting in, that there was a previous thing, it sends something to the whole group. So just be careful when you're putting stuff on your
Yeah, I think
calendar
that's
on the
what happened.
iPhone.
And then I saw it and I go, wait a minute, that's wrong. And I canceled it and then everybody
Oh,
started.
that's why it came up.
Oh, what did I
So
do?
did everybody get notice that today was my son's birthday, because it was on my calendar?
Can we give a special thanks to Kathy for doing the secretary job, because I had it for 2 weeks and I got fired, so.
You may be firing me in 2 weeks.
Thank you,
We'll see.
Kevin.
But I'm a
All
good
right.
typist.
Thank you.
rehired you.
Thank you all. Meeting